Hello, everybody. I am Jeff Duden, and we are On The Homefront. The On The Homefront podcast, currently number 42 in entrepreneurship on Apple. So thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by Homefront Brands, simply building the world's most responsible franchise platform, encouraging entrepreneurs to take action, transform their lives, impact communities, and enhance the lives of those they care the most about, all the while delivering enterprise level solutions to local business owners out there on the home front. So if this sounds like you today, check us out at homefrontbrands.com and start your next chapter of greatness, building your dynasty on the home front. I will be here looking for you. And today I have an extraordinary business builder, and I'm proud to say personal friend, the founder of Burn Bootcamp, Devin Kline. Welcome, Devin.
What's up, JD? I call you JD. I got to call you Jeff Dude on this podcast,
You
or can I
call
still call you JD?
anything you want, sir. Anything you want. We'll be the only ones listening. So, uh, Devin has an incredible story, and I was very fortunate to meet him at a pivotal point during his life. He was born in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he grew up kind of rough. Most of Devin's childhood was riddled with some violence, some government assistance, drug abuse, alcoholism, moving from state to state, and capped off by the abandonment from his mom as a teen. I hope it's okay I shared that, and if not, you can tell me to cut it. But I know it's out there. He spent his time on a sports field and creating businesses to escape his home life, and gives credit to baseball and his wife, Morgan, for saving his life. He met Morgan at 12 years old, and they would eventually get married, open a business, and start a family 12 years later. Devin played collegiate baseball at Central Michigan University, a big pitcher with a super fastball, and left school to continue his baseball career with the San Francisco Giants, which ended a few years later. His baseball journey led to his love for health and fitness because he experienced the joy of helping the host families achieve more happiness through health. This sparked his idea for Burn Bootcamp, and since Devin has dedicated his life's work to helping families all over the world. Today, he is the leader of thousands of amazing people employed by Burn Bootcamp. Hundreds of thousands of members have been through Burn Bootcamp and continue to use it. And these people all share the vision of helping women achieve more than they thought possible for themselves and their families. Welcome, Devin.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, when you read my story, anytime you have somebody else read your story, it's always interesting, and you wouldn't have the opportunity to do that unless I shared it out there before. And so when it comes to sharing my story, I think it's what I'm trying to do is show other people that their story is impactful as well. My story has been the axiom of building the business, and people really resonate with that. It makes it real. It makes it human. And oftentimes I run into people like, you've got incredible things to say. And I'm like, why aren't you saying it? And like, well, because no one's going to care about my story. I'm like, no. You think they're not going to care. Actually, if you don't share it, you're actually doing them a disservice, and they could be going in the opposite way in their life until they heard that one word from you or that one phrase from you that resonated with them in the moment. And then they turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. And so I encourage everyone to share their story vulnerably. And you hit on a lot of the kind of darkest moments just in a few sentences there. So we can elaborate as much as you want on that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I mean, to those who much is given, much is expected, and you've had a lot of success. And from the very beginning, it's always been about other people. It's always been looking for an opportunity to pour into somebody's life that's needed help. And you really, truly are a servant leader, and you've been passionate about that since I first met you the very first day, looking at a rental space. So if you don't mind, Devin, we always start on the home front with setting the foundation by going back into your background. So as much or as little as you care to share, we would love to hear about how you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, during those formation years, the 0 to 7, some texts say different time frames, but that's about right. Like 0 to 7, I was traveling the country with my mother out of the back of her purple Saturn, and living in different apartments, rental houses, from Michigan to Mississippi to Arizona to California to Washington State, back to Arizona, back to California before we actually landed in Michigan. And so to me, as I go rewind and think about how did my personality form, like who am I, right? Is a question you start to ask yourself, I think, when you're on the cusp of maturity. And that doesn't have an age, right? Maturity is just a mindset. It's a state of being where you take responsibility for your own actions. And so I wanted to start to go backward and think about why, how come when people meet me today that they always say that was a extremely positive interaction? They always say, I never had an awkward moment around Devin. They always say he made me feel so welcome and warm and comforted. And he's an intense guy, but that didn't scare me. It was like a loving intensity, right? And I always try to, when I hear that over and over and over, you try to go back and, I really believe that we have a memory to play that tape back, right? That's one of the functions of the memory, is to reconcile with the past in a way. And so, the first 7 years of my life, I think, created extroversion to the degree that that's not inherently part of your DNA or a part of, your biology, your personality. When you're born, like whatever you're born into, I largely believe that we're born with a clean slate and that the life experiences that we have shape us. And, those moving around and, being somebody that was switching schools every 3 months in my formative years, I think allowed me to have that extroverted bone to where, I can go into any room, any environment, any setting, feel comfortable and make my presence known, right? And be a value adder or a contributor to whatever group that I'm in. And so, yeah, I did that. And then once my mom and dad, as you mentioned, the reason we left Battle Creek, Michigan, where I'm born and raised, is because, they're both independently chaotic people. And then when you put these two independently chaotic people together, it was like the closest thing that I could imagine to World War III, where every week, put in perspective, by the time I was 18, I had 50 plus criminal charges that were filed for both my mom and my dad. And so I would see the police like every weekend. It's like, oh, I'll be sitting in my room playing Nintendo and, oh, there's the blue lights again. Right. And it wasn't even a big deal. It didn't become and so they got back together at about 10 years old. We moved back to Michigan. And from that moment forward, I mean, it was insane. I mean, I can remember when I was 12 years old, this story I think will really help people get a snapshot of really who I am and where I come from. So living in a house where, the rent is, a couple $100, $150 a month, you don't exactly have the thickest walls or the best finishes, right? So my room is right next to this set of stairs that's right next to the kitchen. And so every night there's at least an argument. Oftentimes it escalates to something much more violent. And as a young boy, listening to your mother, in effect, be physically abused. She wasn't an angel, but no woman deserves to be physically abused. At 12 years old, I got sick of it. I think as part of that, I was hitting puberty. It's like, I'm just sick of this. And so I tried to step in the middle. And when I tried to step in the middle, I remember taking a shot right to the temple and then waking up about 20 minutes later in a blanket with a rather good-looking police officer wrapping her arm around a young boy. And I'll never forget that moment. And, her just saying like, hey, it's okay. They're not going to hurt you anymore, basically is what she said. And so, that's pain, right? This is why I tell this story, because pain is what molds us. The pain that I was forced to go through as a young boy made me become a man much sooner. I had to become, this is why to me, maturity isn't age-based. I became a mature individual at 12 or 13 years old because I absolutely had to be. It was me, myself, and I watching my father get carted away in a police car.
Hey, first timer. Have you been thinking about quitting your job? Do you want to build something of your own, but don't know where to start? Homefront Brands is one of the leading innovators in franchising today. Homefront Brands provides people with the opportunity to fulfill their entrepreneurial aspirations and build a franchise business within the very durable property services sector. Put your entrepreneurial tools to work in a proven business model that is turnkey for you. Click the link in the description below or go to podcast.homefrontbrands.com to learn more. Gain back control and freedom of your time.
Yeah. So after that incident, and the cops show up and my dad's charged with this child abuse charge. I have this beautiful officer wrapping her arm in a blanket around me, just telling me that everything's going to be okay. And I remember she's beautiful because I remember everything about that moment. And it was really emotionally embossing for me. It's like this stamp in time that, and I'm sure you have like similar instances in time where it might be insignificant to other people. And, if I told my life's journey without kind of emphasizing any of these emotions, people might not remember it, but this is something it's something that shaped me. It's something that I will remember forever. In that moment, I became a man. I truly believe that. I was 12 years old, and my superhero, the person that I looked up to my whole life, the McDonald's All-American basketball player, the Detroit Tiger, the hardworking man that was my father, took his aggression out on me, and that was the last time that I allowed myself to look up to somebody that would do those things. And so in the moment, I remember realizing like, dude, you're on your own. And this is why I believe that maturity is ageless. It's because once you take responsibility and accountability for your own actions, like to me, that's the definition of maturity. And I had to start doing that, getting myself up for school. We were on welfare. And so, basically, going to school, like using this bridge card, it's called in Michigan, to buy my lunches, and using the bridge card to go to Aldi's grocery store and buy my own food, make my own food, get myself up for my siblings up for school. It's just, not a lot of 12-year-olds should have to go through that. And just that pain really created a monster out of me in a positive way. Like there's not what people deal with today and call pain. It's somewhat laughable to me because I've just gone through such a deep, dark period of my life, and everybody has that, right? Everybody has their own version of that story. But I made the decision to share mine and really use it and use that pain, because you go one of two ways, right? You get flattened out by that type of pressure, or you can say, not me, never again will I experience that. And that's almost breakthrough-esque for people.
When I've talked to people that have had similar experiences, and I've had similar experiences myself growing up, a couple of things happen. Number one, people learn how to hustle, and they create hustles, and they start doing something to make money because they need money. And now that they realize that everything's just not given to them, then you start thinking about, okay, well, I've got to start providing for things that I want or might want at some point down the road. And the other thing is you tend to seek out relationships from a peer group, from a coach, from another family, from a girlfriend. How do those two things from the time that you were 12 to the time that you were 17 manifest in your life?
Yeah, no, that's a really great observation and connection amongst the different people you're talking to, because you hit it literally spot on, that once you realize that there's no encouragement inside the four walls of your home, that there's no
Right.
money inside the four walls of your home, that the things that you need as a human being in order to live a successful life, like those resources aren't there. And so, yeah, I know you're a big fan of Tony Robbins too. One of the quotes I remember from him around this time, I think it was a couple years later, but I remember he's saying, when there's no resources, successful people get resourceful. And so resourcefulness was about the only resource I had. And so if I wanted money, I had to go make it. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, but I knew what money was, and I knew it was green, and I knew it bought things, and I knew if I had a lot of it, I could probably get a little bit more respect than if I didn't have any of it at all. Because being inherently disrespected because of your last name is I think a trauma that a lot of people don't necessarily make the connections to, that you are your father, you are your mother in the eyes of other people in the community, until you really create your own brand and your own personality and your own reputation. And so,
Yeah, it fuels the desire for significance.
100%. I mean,
It just it's like, okay, well, I'm nothing, and I'm less than nothing because I'm not even normal in the school or with the other people. I'd see people doing other things, going on vacation, having nuclear families, and so you're fighting off your back, and you're disrespected, and you lack significance. And many people, you look at very successful people, more often than not, they came from really situations where they didn't have a safety net. So once you grow up and you don't have a net, and then you realize, first of all, you become fearless, because I know that I can always start back with zero and
Right.
I'd be fine.
Right.
So I could lose everything. I could go back to zero and I could be fine. And number two, I know that if I do fall off that rope and I hit the ground hard, that I know I'm going to get up.
For sure. You've already felt it, or you
100%.
felt that pain. So like, where else people say like, once you hit rock bottom, you can't go any lower. It's like, well, I felt like I hit rock bottom, and then for like 5 or 10 years was just drug across the bottom of the sand, like getting shells in my eyeballs and stuff, And so I
Yeah.
think you can, but this, to your point, what it did for me was it created a risk profile inside of me, right? It's like, because if there isn't another way to go besides up, I've already felt the pain at a very deep level. How could I feel more misery and suffering than what I've already felt? So let's just go, because let's just do it. Let's do the business. Let's start it. Let's go make the money. Let's go help the people. And there's just a risk tolerance, I think, that's created in individuals that have nothing to lose, right? I think it's logical. And, back to your original question, it's like, well, I didn't know what entrepreneur was, but I went out and started a snow removal business right away. I was like, looking back on it, it's like my first franchise in a sense. We had these two neighborhoods, my friend's neighborhood and mine, and we had these small driveways, right? So we would go around and I would knock on the door with a clipboard. It was called like 20-minute snow removal. And I'm a big branding guy. Always been this way. I just call things what they are. Burn Bootcamp. Pretty straightforward, like 20-minute snow removal, right? So it was that. And I had two friends. They would come behind me with shovels, and I would go be the salesman, knock on the doors and procure the accounts, and they would come through, clean the driveway. And so we'd go out for 8 hours, and we'd have, 5, 6, 7, 8 driveways to do, split $20 3 ways, and have one heck of a day. And so we did that. And that was fun. And that was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And there was a few more that we can get into in those teen years. But to your point, it was that escape, right? Like it was, I found a solution to a problem, and it was through going to build something, or in my mind, I just wanted money for the chocolate milk at school, because the food stamps wouldn't buy the chocolate milk. They only bought the white milk. So if you had the white milk, you'd have a chocolate milk. That was like a like a way for kids to understand like the position that they're in, in the hierarchy of society. And then I meet Morgan, right? And Morgan and I meet when we're 12 years old. Your second point was that, people that come from pain seek out relationships. Well, when I looked around, I think you were probably like the first male role model that actually was like, hey, you're pretty talented. I'm going to take you under my wing and show you a couple things. I had a lot of good people in my life, but nobody that was willing to sit down hours of their time, and do what you did for me. We can get into that. But I had no mentors around me, right? Like my dad was, and my uncles were cut from the same cloth. Like, put it this way. When I was 16, they hired me to create illegal license plate tags on iMac. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for this. On my iMac that I, by the way, bought with my own money, on my iMac. And I would literally I would like mimic the typeface, and I would mimic the tag. I didn't know what the hell I was doing at the time. I was getting $100 a pop for this, right? And I would make like these tags for my uncles and his friends and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. But at the end of the day, this was
Well, I think that's state level crime. So the statute of limitations is probably shorter than a federal
all right.
crime. So I think
Blaming
you're
it on you,
probably
I'll get in
good.
trouble. I'm gonna say, Jeff, didn't do it.
We'll cut. We can edit.
No, it's it goes to show the mentorship environment that I had around me, right? Like doing illegal things was just normal. It was like, there was nothing. My dad was a felon. My uncles were in and out of jail too. So I just earned for this like role model in a sense. And weirdly enough, Morgan and her family played that role for me. So I would escape to the baseball field, the football field, the basketball court, first one to show up, last one to leave, always work the hardest just to be out of that whole world at home. And whenever Morgan's parents would allow me to come over and hang out, I would. And I knew I wanted to marry this girl from a very young age. In 8th grade, I wrote a letter to her best friend, Erin. I still have it today. And it says, I love Morgan. I'm going to marry her someday. And will you please tell her that? Because I'm too embarrassed to tell her that myself.
That's fantastic. So you're getting through high school. When did you pick up a baseball?
I picked up a baseball when I got back from, I would say, the West Coast tour of all the states with my mom.
Yeah.
I didn't play sports up until then. I knew my dad played sports. I knew he played baseball. I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to play Pop Warner football, I remember, and my mom couldn't afford it. and she couldn't get me to and from the field and stuff. And so she was a career night waitress, and so she would hire babysitters, and I would stay with babysitters every night, and even on the weekends. And so what I would do was hang out at the skate parks a lot when I was in that period of time in my life. And so, yeah, I didn't start playing sports until I got back, and my dad threw me right into football. I picked up a baseball when I was 9 years old. That first year I got back, 8, 9 years old, and was pretty darn good at it. Right. And following in his footsteps, ended up playing up, meaning like I was 12 playing on 14. I was 14 playing on 16. I was 14, playing against 18-year-olds in high school. And, I was doing well. And I knew that, hey, I've got something here. But also, I was a skinny little 5'9", like skinny 140-pound kid. I had they call it a live arm. I could throw the ball hard for my weight, but I couldn't throw the ball hard enough to play D1. And so my freshman year, when I made varsity, they told me, hey, you're good, but you're not D1, right? So what you need to do is put more weight on your body so that, the ball has more velocity behind it, right? Because mass creates velocity. And so this is when, in retrospect, this is when I fell in love with fitness, because I started working at my butt off going into my high school year, my ninth grade year. I gained 25 pounds by the time I'm a junior, right? And I'm going through puberty too. So it wasn't purely like,
Right.
the weight gainer that I was buying or anything like that. The weights I was lifting. It was a combination of things.
Yeah. But your nutrition probably hadn't been great.
It was, given the circumstances we were in, it was surprisingly better than you would think, because we had the bridge card. I could go up to Aldi's, which was right next to my house, and I could get loads of oatmeal, and I could get loads of like, good stuff. Now I wasn't eating like a king or anything, but I also wasn't going malnourished, right? I knew that I needed to gain weight. I started learning about it. Actually got a torrent file. If you remember the torrent files, where they'd give you like a little USB disk, and you load it in your computer, and now we got the cloud, we don't need any of that stuff. But back in the day, I got this torrent file, and it had Arnold Schwarzenegger's book in it. It had Bigger, Faster, Stronger, a popular program. I mean, you name it. Every program in history was on this thing, and I just started consuming. And this is where I got my nutrition game plan from, and really started executing against it right away, almost like 8th grade, 9th grade, and learned a lot. I learned so much, gained 25 pounds, ended up my fastball getting in the low 90s in my junior year. And I got signed by Central Michigan for a 70% partial scholarship, ended up earning a 90% scholarship as I became good. But that was like, my ticket out, I signed on the very first chance that I got. I didn't take another offer. I didn't go shop the market. I was like, I'm taking it. It's here. There might not be another one.
Right. Scarcity a little bit. You make another interesting point. You had been a blank slate mentally from when it came to positivity. So you had gone through so much negative stuff, the perception of it, that it's negative. Sometimes when people say, well, I grew up poor, but I never knew I was poor. I get the sense that you knew exactly where you were. You were perceptive, you were aware, and you were really trying to feel things out. But then all of a sudden, you've already referenced Tony Robbins, you reference your torrent drive. So now you're getting books, you're getting audio, you're getting tapes, and all of this stuff. And sometimes when kids are comfortable, they look at that stuff and they don't do it. Like they're just like, well, it's like, I've got plenty of other stuff to read, and maybe it's whatever's in the school, but like they don't have a thirst or a hunger for things that are going to help them. And I was a voracious reader coming out of high school and into college. And even though I wasn't doing things that were conducive to somebody that was successful or compliant in life. But there was this weird, on one hand, these are my behaviors, but on the other hand, I'm digging through content and I'm searching for something. Didn't even know what it was, but I'm just, I have thousands of books now. I've read at least half of all of them. Sometimes you're like, okay, I get once I start saying the same thing over and over again, I'll go through it. But yeah, so you have these conditions where you're taking full advantage of it. And then by happenstance, or maybe you made things happen, you're getting fed the things that you need to shape you into the beginnings of who you are today.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you articulated that beautifully. And, self-awareness, I think, is the unsung hero of any great entrepreneur. And to me, I started to become self-aware as soon as I became good at sports. That was the catalyst, because now I'm playing baseball with this team, and these kids are from everywhere, right? They're from Ohio, Indiana, Florida, Texas. I'm in the elite of the elite, in this country for talent level in baseball. So I'm getting recruited to play on teams where their parents have their money and they're, you know, rolling up in the G-Wagon or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a G-Wagon. That's definitely not a G-Wagon. Yeah. It's like, I got some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. You got your mom, buying the whole team lunch, and I get to keep my peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner tonight. So thank you. You know what I mean? So there's these, I definitely have that, like a natural sense of awareness. I think that inclination to be emotionally intelligent, although I think that's a skill that we learn. But I think, you build a business or a personality or a reputation out of inspiration or desperation. We've all heard that before. And for me, it was the classic case of desperation, right? I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't know really what the hell any of it was. I just knew I wasn't in a good place and I needed to control and do something to get out. When I turned 16, I actually, so do you want to hear a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm a baseball player. I'm starting to kill it, right? And so I get put on this super team. It's just, I don't know if you ever went through this in youth sports, but you get these moments in time where a couple dads get together, right? And they see that son over here on this team and that son over here on this team. And they're like, we could beat all these teams if we pulled these kids together, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so we got this one super team. We were going against the East Cobb All-Stars. So the Georgia Stars, one of the best teams in the country. And we are a team no one's ever heard of before. First year, we called ourselves Steels because we got a sponsor called Steels. And nobody has ever heard us before. We come out, we field the team with, it turns out to be all future Division I major conference players, right? We go down to Kissimmee, Florida, and we absolutely mollywop everybody. Like, it's not even fair. We beat the Georgia Stars 8-2 in the finals. And they're like, who the hell are these kids out of the Midwest who just come down to this tournament? It was the USSSA World Series, and just run through it, right? So I'm on a high, like, we've got scouts there, we drive back to Michigan. Right before I left, I had been working on the roofs with my uncles with a pitchfork and tearing off tar paper and popping out nails and hauling 80-pound shingles, up each shoulder, switching shoulders all day, working odd end jobs with my dad, slinging CDs at school, doing the snow shoveling, quote unquote franchise, right? All of this, by the way, has an outcome. I'm not doing it just to do it. The outcome is respect and freedom, right? So respect from the community and freedom from my household. And so a car to me symbolized freedom more so than anything else could, because I knew as soon as I could get my license, I'm already unsupervised. I don't have a boss. Like, I get to go do my own thing. So it represented freedom to me. So I spent I saved up about $3,000. And then my dad knew somebody who ran car auctions. So I went to a car auction under the guise of his company, and I bought a Pontiac Grand Am for like $2,000. Did all my insurance, did the whole 9 yards myself, basically, with my parents' sign off. Go down to this baseball tournament in Florida, best time of my life, win the championship, win the World Series, drive back home. My car's gone. Gone. Just like, I left it right here. It's like that movie, like, dude, where's my car? Dude, where's your car? I don't know, dude, where's my car, right? Well, my mom ended up leaving the family again to do the same thing she did when I was a little kid, and went back out to the West Coast, took my car, took it, sold it for moving money. And, they call it parental abduction. So this was the second time she had done this, and took my little brother, right, who I'm really close with growing up, takes him away from the family. And that was like the last time we ever had a relationship. And so that story leaves me with this weird relationship with vehicles. It leaves me with this this relationship of transportation and freedom. And so for me, I felt like my freedom was taken away more so than my car being taken away. And so that kicked me into freaking high gear mode. I go out and and I'm a kid in school at this time, right? And so I'm going back into my junior year. And I'm working with my dad still in the morning until school starts. And after school, when I could around practices, I save up over about a 2-month period. I save up about $600. And then I go buy a 89 rather, purple Ford Probe with the frog-eyed lenses that kind of do this. Only one of them worked. Right? And in Michigan, you're from Chicago, we had to jump start it. You had to rub the wires together to jump start it.
Oh yeah.
And I had that car for all of 4 weeks before I found this little site of eBay, flipped that car on eBay, went out, bought a brand new car, another Pontiac Grand Am. I had a little business. I was selling cars to people in Mexico. And so I would basically I would put a car online. I would arbitrage by just marking it up a little bit and emailing 500 people, say, do you want to buy this car? For whatever reason, I don't know if it was a drug cartel or whatever. For whatever reason, all the people that bought these cars for me would fly into the Detroit airport, pick the car up. I'd drive up to Detroit airport with my buddy. He'd follow me. They'd pick the car up and then drive it back to Mexico. And I did this 3 or 4 times and went from a Pontiac Grand Am to a Ford Escape. And then this Ford Escape took it to Ohio, sold it in Ohio for a couple $1,000, bought a green Mustang, went off to college with a green Mustang and 10 grand after getting my car stolen. So that was, I think, another point of pain for me. And what really shaped me is to your point, you could take this away from me, take it away, go ahead. I'll be good. I'll get it back. There's no doubt in my mind I'll go get it back because I've already had it stripped from me before. I had my freedom stripped from me before and I went and earned it back. And so I think it's a good story because not only does it show the entrepreneurial DNA, but also just when shit happens to us in our lives, resiliency is a skill, exercising that's important.
It's an incredible story. I really appreciate you sharing it. I think people are going to get a lot from it, Devin. You go to college, you get out, you get picked up by Major League Baseball. How did that phase of your life work? You were in the minor leagues. You were on what team were you on?
So I come in as a freshman and I get the opportunity to start at Central Michigan University. My first start is against the Michigan Wolverines. And at this point, I'm like, okay, let's go. I made it. My dreams of chasing the big league lights are so close. I'm pitching against a top team in the country and I'm doing well. I think I ended up giving up a 2-run or 3-run home run, but pitched really well, right? One mistake could be 3 runs in my world. But so it's developed a slider, gained more weight, fastball got up into the sitting in the low 90s, could touch mid 90s if I needed to, and went out to the Northwoods League, which is, most people know Cape Cod, out in Massachusetts. And Cape Cod is the best league, I would say, for all the big major SEC schools. And then the Northwoods League is that level, right underneath it, could probably compete with those teams, have good enough players that on those teams to be in the Cape Cod League. But as a whole, the teams weren't as good. But I was 19 for 19 in saves, closing. I was a closing pitcher, 19 for 19 in saves. And the Giants came through and plucked me right out of that league. And again, I was not interested in college. I wanted to go be a big leaguer. I've got a plan A. Plan A is not to be the best Central Michigan Chippewa ever. It's to go play at the next level and then eventually, stake my claim as the Cy Young Award winner. That was my plan. And I've always had this attitude of, if you can't be world-class in it, then don't do it. Because you get to focus on a finite amount of things in this world and in our lifetime. And so in 99% of the stuff out there, we know nothing about. And so it's if you can go out there and be world-class at something, that's a possibility that really excited me. And I realized about my second year that I'm getting older. And being 23 is pretty old, honestly, for a baseball player. I'm getting these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids from around the world, from a Dominican Republic, incredibly talented, like not even close. And so I start to notice me filling this like mentorship role for these younger guys that are better than me. They're not as good as me today statistically, but when you throw 99 miles an hour, like, and you're 17, you're probably going to be better than me at some point, right? So I didn't want to just show up and be a glorified mentor anymore. I wanted to be world class. I wanted to win the Cy Young Award. And if I no longer had the ability to do that, I think going back to self-awareness, it's like, don't bang your head against the wall and ask yourself why your head's bleeding. Like, because you're banging your head against the wall, right? And I was doing that metaphorically, and I wanted to be world class. And so I said, can I be that in this? Probably not, Devin. Like, you're good, but you're a little wild, and you've been wild for the last 7 years. You can't be wild at the next level, right? And so I ended up hanging up the cleats and started my journey to pursue something that I had the potential to be two things: world class in, and to do something that I love that can make me a lot of money that help people.
How did you transition into fitness? And maybe this would be a good time just to, like, for people that don't know Burn Bootcamp, although as I travel around the country, I ask people if they know Burn, and they always seem to, because you've got hundreds and hundreds of locations. But just as far as, where are you today with locations open and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, 376 locations open, a couple more coming down the pipeline. In our world, we use the term awarded, which essentially means territory sold, for those that don't know. And yeah, so there were 546 there, and we have 10 of those are HQ gyms. So we have the directly owned and operated companies as well. And yeah, it's been one hell of a ride. It's been incredible. We're one of the most sought after fitness companies in the capital markets today, because of the success that we've had and the amount of time that we've had it. And it's just having so much fun doing it. About 6,000 people in the organization that work with us, our team members, and active members right now. We're around like 115,000. Get ready to close a big promotion that should take us near the 120, 125 mark. And yeah, everything after the pandemic, which was a nightmare on Elm Street, to say the least. Everything post that is not only recovered, but well beyond where we thought it would be. And everything's going really, really well on that side, to the point where I'm now the visionary. I'm not the CEO anymore. And Morgan is the CEO, and she has her team of 11 VPs, and she's running the business on a daily basis. And now my job is to look up and out and to do what I'm good at. And that's imagine the skyscraper that's standing, you know, you know, super tall, that hasn't been imagined by anybody else yet. And so I'm in that, kind of back to when you first met me, I think, when it was 14, around 14, when I was kind of out front in the business. Just everything that we were doing was net new territory. So I feel very congruent right now with the role that I'm in, and the economics of the business. And can I, while I'm doing this, I want to, can I share our story real quick with your listeners?
Oh,
Or do you want
100%.
to move on?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
100%. And I'd like you to, maybe during that time, it'd be interesting for people to know that, you and Morgan had she had a career, and she picked Charlotte to come, and then you built you started doing a boot camp and just training people in a parking lot, and you took
Yeah.
the few dollars you had, and you built some stuff, and then you decided, I need a location.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. That's around where you come in. So I'll take us up until that point. And so, okay, so I get released from the minor leagues, right? I'm devastated. I'm in my hotel room. I'm crying like a little baby. Like, this is my dream. And I'm just like angry tears. You go from angry to frustrated to sad to uncertain, like, what's the future going to hold for me probably was the question that was on my mind the most, because my whole life people told me I was just a byproduct of my father. And so, is that what all there is in store for me after this? Is that, these are the existential questions you're forced to deal with as, the plan A people out there that don't have a plan B. There's pros and cons to everything. If you don't have a plan B and you're a plan A person like me, get ready to be in the shit emotionally if that doesn't work out for a moment. And that was it for me. About 2 hours of just, beating the hell out of my pillows, and my poor pillows, poor pillows. And they took it that day. And crumpled up my hat, threw it against the wall as many times as I could. Not to disrespect the opportunity, but just to let it all out, I guess. And so Morgan said, keep moving. I called her. She said, keep moving. Come to Florida with me. I had spent the last off season there. She's rocking at Kellogg's at the time. We're both from Battle Creek, Michigan. Remind you, we met when we were 12 years old. Her family has a legacy with Kellogg's company, and her grandfather was a career Kellogg's guy. And so following in his footsteps, her father passed away tragically in a car accident when she was 5 years old. And so she never got a chance to really know her father. So her grandfather was the man in her life before her stepfather came in. And so she's pursuing that. She's a freaking rock star, as you know. And so she's down there slinging cereal, as a saleswoman in Southwest Florida, doing well at it, gets an opportunity to go to Charlotte. In the meantime, I want to make money. That's number one, right? Because I want to support the woman who has paid for my cell phone bill for the last 8 years when I couldn't afford it, right? So I go out and I get a job with DirecTV, slinging TV services to people that just bought like super overpriced plasma TV screens when they were like 15 grand for a 72-inch back in, like, you remember those days, right?
I do.
So you see the rich people walking in with the, with the Mercedes-Benz keys, and you're like, oh, yep, that's my target right there. And I would probably make 200 pitches a day only to lock down, one, carbon copy piece of paper I got to bring back to the office with a deal on it. And that cut my teeth in sales. I hated it because I wasn't helping anybody, right? I was actually probably doing the opposite and selling something to people that they didn't actually need, which didn't feel good. But I made about 6 to 8 grand a month doing it. And that felt good. But I realized at that time that it can't be about money. Money's got to be a byproduct of something that I asked myself the question, if I had to wake up every day and do something that I loved and I never got paid for it, but I was good from like a universal human needs standpoint. I didn't need shelter. I didn't need food. I didn't need, love and care. What would I do? And it was what got me to fall in love with baseball and what got me to the next level. And that was fitness. And then you couple that, and you mentioned this in your bio, I believe, you couple that with this experience of traveling and actually seeing real American families that don't have like the bottom 1% of problems that I was growing up dealing with that were, like you said, somewhat normalized in my world. I got to see what normal American families were dealing with, which was lethargy and being overweight, obese, not eating well, a general fog of just content, right? Like unhappiness, maybe glimpses of it, but chronically unhappy. And so I would be in these environments, working hard, eating right, refusing the Lucky Charms that they're trying to feed me, whatever they're trying to help. But like, I've got goals, right? And that drive, I think, rubbed off on them. And they started asking, how do I get healthy? And I started building workouts and making food in the morning. And Wyoming was my favorite experience with a gal named Nicole DeHope, who took my advice and for 3 months just like killed it and lost 20 pounds and gained everything, right? Gained confidence, etc. And so, going into this move to Charlotte, we knew all this stuff was baked, right? We knew we had put the pieces together already. I had spent, after DirecTV, about 8 months at Lifestyle Family Fitness down in Florida doing Burn Bootcamp only under the guise of this thing called Lightning 900. And so I did the one-on-many model, a personal trainer, certified personal trainer. I don't have an exercise science degree, but I have a NCCA accredited NASM, which is a National Academy of Sports Medicine certification, one of the highest you can get out there in absence of a college degree. So we require one of these two things to be a personal trainer, right? So I took those credentials and married that with the one-on-many model where I could keep a semi-premium price point, but put multiple people in a group. Because these personal trainers I was working with, they were like working for 30 years doing what they love, but they're broke. They're still driving to work in a Honda with its bumper missing. And I'm like,
doing
one-on-one,
right? Just doing one-on-ones.
Yeah. One-on-ones. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like I judge anybody for any material possessions that they have, but it is a sign of you probably aren't that wealthy, right? And so I wanted to be wealthy by helping people doing what I love. That's a hard question to answer. And that was the question I posed on how to create Burn Bootcamp in the first place. You couple that, layer on top of that, the way I was treated as a personal trainer was completely different than than the way I was treated on my sports teams, where it's championship culture, one for all for one we're going to win. We need you. You're accountable. You can't blame anybody else. If you screw up, you've got to have personal accountability. This was like, what are you going to do for the company? Right? Oh, you did a lot? Good. Not good enough. Come back to me and I'll take you seriously if you're still here in a year. It was like that type of stuff, which you don't want to talk to me that way because that's the way my father talked to me. And I will absolutely wreck shit, right? Like, so I did exactly the opposite of what this guy said, became this big nuisance. But at the same time, I'm doing innovative stuff right in front of them. And they didn't like that too much. So I ended up, Morgan got the job promotion. I followed her. That's sugar mama. She paying for my cell phone bill. So I was an imbecile to not follow her. And so I did it. She was either going to move to Charlotte or Dallas. She chose Charlotte. I moved up, started just knocking on doors of businesses. Hey, I'm the newest personal trainer around town. I'm starting this parking lot gym. Would you like to come work out with me at 5 a.m. in the morning when it's dark in a parking lot? Oh, by the way, here's a t-shirt. Right? I felt like such a compelling offer. Right?
Yeah.
Such a compelling offer for people. Over and over and over for 90 days. I just stomped the grounds of this area. Started in a parking lot, did 4 more parking lots. Nobody would give us a lease because we were 24-year-old kids with no financial history. And so 5 parking lot gyms later, we've got about 1,000 members. I look down at my bank account without even having a brick and mortar yet. And I'm like, there's 2 commas there. And we're scared. We're nervous. We're like imposter syndrome. Like, do we deserve this? I'm sure you've gone through, and I think all successful people do at some point. They say like, okay, what's next now that I achieved this thing? And trust me, it doesn't fall on me lightly that so many people who are incredibly talented, incredibly smart, who have incredible ideas, who work just as hard, do all the things. They don't pop on their first business. They might be on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time and fail 7 times over. I don't know what it is, Jeff. I don't necessarily believe in luck. I'm not a luck guy. I don't think like luck is a thing, but there's some element. Maybe it's grace. I don't know. I don't know what the word is. Maybe it is luck. I don't know. I'm still trying to reconcile that one. But for whatever reason, I'm sitting here at 27 and I'm a millionaire in cash, not just like by like net worth hyperbole, like in cash. Okay. What do we do next? Right. So we flip all of the gyms into brick and mortars. That's the next step. Okay. I'm having a lot of trouble doing this. A lot of trouble. Not enough financial. I can show people cash and they're like, no, thank you. I need history. You've never had a lease before. No, thank you. I go and I get a tip from one of my members who there's a building that's about to go on the market, who's owned by the person she works for, who has a partnership with a franchisor in the area, who I'd like you to meet with them. So I show up to 311 Gilead Road and I walk in and I probably come right off the back of a camp or something. So I got gym shorts and a gym shirt on. And I remember seeing this like cool dude, like, please don't be offended by this. He's got salt and pepper in his beard. He's got nice glasses on. Like he's like, looks good, tall, handsome, like super successful. And I'm like, this guy's like pretty cool. I start talking to you. And then you actually look at me. I don't know if you remember this. I wrote about this in my book, Stop Starting Over. You have a line in there. And I never forget this the rest of my life. You said, dude, this is exactly what you said. You said, dude, have you ever heard of franchising? You should franchise this concept. This thing is sexy. That's what you told me. And I knew what franchising was, but I thought it was just like fast food, right? I thought it was fast food and then like sports teams could be like you could have an NFL franchise or whatever. I didn't realize that this was a vehicle that we could use to grow our business. We believed in brand equity, right? We believed in the power of the logo, but we didn't know the vehicle. And so I met you and we didn't talk about franchising for the rest of the time. I was just like, yeah, I know about it. Yeah, I kind of know. And you probably could tell that I had no idea what I was talking about. But you looked at Morgan and I and you said, hey, you're not qualified. I know why people are turning you down, but I see something in you that is special. And plus I want to rent this place out. So I'll roll the dice on you guys. Deal's done. How much can you afford? Right. And you asked me that question. And
well, let me just share something because I think it's really important for people to understand like that interaction. I asked you, I think I asked you, why do you do what you do? Or some variation of a question that said, why do you do what you do? And you were so quick and so passionate to say, you shared that you played minor league baseball, you stayed with these families, you helped these people lose weight. You were going to build a fit boot camp for moms, and like you knew exactly what your purpose was. And I know people that have been in business for 20 years, and if you ask them to articulate why they do what they do, what who their customer is, what impact they make in the world, they can't answer it. And like you knew, like you were just intense, you were focused, you were direct. You and Morgan were there, and I asked you, I said, well, how are you going to upfit the space? And you said, we can do this whole thing for $30,000. We're going to do the work ourselves. We can turn this thing. We're not going to have any expensive equipment. So you knew that the economics, you knew you had the answers not only to the purpose, the vision. You knew who your customer was, and you knew the economics of what it was going to take to get in there. That's qualified to me because the people matter more than the paper.
Wow. Yeah, no, definitely. And you gave me an opportunity to do something that nobody else would give me an opportunity to do. And I think that's part and parcel to your nature as an entrepreneur. That's what we do, right? We give people chances. Your entire journey, from Advana Clean to where you're at now with Homefront Brands. It's all about just giving other people an opportunity. And you saw in me, I think probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some of your personality that you saw inside yourself, and you could correlate those things to what the future might look like in some way, shape, or form. With that one pretty close there. And so, yeah, from there, we did the deal. And then about 2 years later, that gym, Huntersville, North Carolina, at 311 Gilead Road, becomes one of the largest boutique fitness studios in the entire country. Upwards, now it's transformed into Lake Norman. So we still own the building that you sold to us, and now that's our training center, where we bring in all of our people for Burn University, and it's our broadcast studio that we do all of our digital broadcasting and our live workouts with. But since then you didn't stop supporting me there. So on record, on the wax here, on the Homefront Podcast with Jeff Duden, I want to say, if you're out there and you're starting a business, keep going to shake hands, because I didn't know who Jeff Duden was one day, and I just went out there and said, I'm going to meet as many people as possible and share my mission and message. And you never know who you're going to meet. And, some people can be in your life for 10 years and not add value. And some people can be in your life for 10 days and they can be a friend for life. And so, Jeff, you were that for me. And I hope other people get to find their version of you for them, because you've been there for me. And hopefully I've reciprocated that now in a friendship, over the years. And
100%. I value our friendship. I'm so proud of you and your family, and just really honored to and excited to watch what you've done with the company. It's really, you and Morgan have just blown it out of beyond all expectations that anybody could have possibly had. So it's been awesome, and hats off. Looking at the business today, and I know I want to be respectful of your time here, but looking at the business today, it's a massive business. Are you international at this point?
we are not. We don't have anything open internationally yet. That is
Okay.
part of me as a visionary, it being freed from meetings and being freed from the responsibility of management, the responsibility of standing meetings, so that I can be up and out and go forge new ground.
Got it. And talk a little bit about the diversification of Burn Bootcamp. How have you addressed nutrition, accountability, other products? What is the entire business group look like today?
One of the axioms that we work off of, or philosophy, if you will, is that confidence is a skill, right? And if confidence is a skill, that manifests itself into a business philosophy that says, here's our strategy. We are a marketing company whose product is confidence. And when you take that perspective, it's just a slight shift in perspective. You're just adjusting the lens a little bit, rather than being a fitness company whose product is memberships. We are a marketing company whose product is confidence. And what that does is that allows us to have a bigger mission. That allows the gyms themselves, all 376 of those gyms, to be a metaphorical fire pit in which we as a community come around to sit together, to have these, fireside chats, which actually our workouts are quite a bit harder than sitting around a fireside chat. But the metaphor holds up that we don't come to the gym to work out. The workout itself is just the anchor in our day that allows us to move through our day with confidence, and then week over week over week, increase that confidence. Confidence is a skill. You can learn it. If you pick up 20s and you lift them and you realize I can pick up 30s, you just learned something about yourself. You just learned that you're stronger than you think you are. And if the end game isn't fitness, if the end game is confidence, now we've got an opportunity to inherently let that spill over and encourage that spill over into not only the spiritual life, but the emotional life and the mental life. You want to buy a gym? Great. Financial life as well, right? And you can, if you love this thing, you can take it to where it is a true lifestyle. And so that's where the lifestyle company comes from, is that we're actually not really a fitness company at all. We're not. We do fitness, but that's not who we are. Who we are is an organization who provides an environment where people can feel comfortable and safe with the position that they're in right now in life, and then get around a team, much like I was on the Chippewas, much like you were as a college football player, and me with the Giants. It's like getting on a team that has championship expectations elevates your game as an individual. And if we could hold the standard high, knowing that starts with Morgan and I at the top and stops with the newest employee or member that we have, if from the top all the way down to the newest employee, or the metaphorical bottom, if you will, every person from A to Z has a outstanding standard, right? An outstanding standard. Like we're not just here to be good. We're not here to be, you can be mediocre, and I have nothing wrong with that. I have nothing against that. Not here though.
Yeah. I've heard you say one time, and I don't know if you still hold this belief, but you said, I've learned not to have expectations of anybody so that I don't get disappointed. And it took me a while to really think through that and understand that, but I get what you're saying there, because once you put your success on other people, they're never going to want it for you as bad as you want it for you. So basically it's an ownership statement. Ben Carson, I've heard him say, speaking, that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you is you. And personal accountability is maybe that's even gone out of fashion in our country a little bit here lately. But yeah, it does seem like it. But like, it's when you get right back to performing at a high level, you get back to athletics, you get back to really, picking yourself up, and you not making excuses for, about any of your circumstances, just internalize them and overcoming them and putting a plan in place and then putting in the work. Is that what that statement's about? And do you still think about it that way?
I do. And so any type of like, maxim like that always has nuances, right? And
There's an exception to everyone,
it's always just an
every
angle,
rule.
right? It's a unique angle for me to say something to somebody, and similar to when I said it to you for the first time, you were like, "Hmm, mm, I'm not sure if I vibe with that." And that's kind of what I say it for, is to get people to think about it, right? Are you placing expectations on other people, and are you giving them the keys to your satisfaction and happiness? To me, all the things that you said for sure, but the way I language it is, if I have an expectations of others and they don't meet their expectation, then I'm allowing them to dictate something of my happiness, and it was out of my control. But if I hire people and I partner with people that already have a high expectation of themselves, right? I don't have to then bestow my expectations that I would have upon them, and therefore being disappointed. That way, if I hire them and they have expectations of themselves to do great things, no one wants to suck at their job, right? So if they're doing great things and they fail, well, then they're disappointing themselves. If I'm disappointed, what's that relationship going to look like between you and I? I want you to fail, right? I don't want anything that you do to get in the way of my leadership. What I saw happen, why I came up with this little spin on something that I think is a lot of people say in different ways, is because I found myself in the absence of that philosophy having to step in, or at least choosing to step in front of somebody before they made the mistake, so that they didn't make the mistake, so that I didn't have to be disappointed in them because I did give them an expectation. If I remove the expectation and I just trade that, like Tony Robbins says, for the appreciation of what that person is doing, it's not that I don't expect them to hit deadlines, right? It's not, I don't expect them to be a good teammate. It's not, I don't expect them to follow the core values. It's that they already expect that out of themselves. And so when it comes down to having that hard conversation, I don't have to be the person that gets in the middle and that taints the relationship that we have because you failed me. Like, you failed me. Isn't that kind of egocentric to say you failed me? It's like people first in our organization says the opposite of what it means in most companies. In most companies, when anybody has a core values that has anything to do with people, it's always going to read something along the lines of, hey, here's how you can use your talent, your skills, and your abilities to come help the company reach its goals. It's a very subtle difference. It's a reflection of expectations, of not giving people expectations. And it's the following: your goals, your vision, your ambition, your skills are going to help you reach your goals. And this company can be a vehicle for that if you hold yourself to a high expectation. And so I found that little subtle nuance of saying the company's here for you to help you reach your goals versus you're here to help the company reach its goals has been the foundational notion that has created this amazing culture that so many companies are trying to replicate. They're trying to replicate the Burn Bootcamp culture because it's one of the best out there right now. And that's largely part of the reason. Not wrong, not right. I don't try to be right or wrong. I just try to do what's right and what's wrong on a case-by-case basis. So,
Yeah, subtle. Thank you for unpacking that. I find that to be very interesting. Well, Devin, this has been amazing. We're coming to the end of our time now. So I have a question for you. If you had one sentence to make an impact in someone else's life, you have a go-to sentence maybe for your kids, yourself, what would that be?
I was going to think of something like super like clever here, because I know this is a big part of your show, but in the truest, authentic version of myself, I'll have to say exactly what it is. And it stems from the phone call that Morgan and I had when I got released. And she told me probably 30 freaking times, because she needed to walk me off a ledge, you got to keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. It's like pain's going to come your way, and it's going to come your way in heavy doses. And oftentimes when it rains, it pours. And if you keep moving forward, not keep moving, but keep moving forward, you're going to end up being somewhere in 5 years, right? And you don't want to be in a place where every day you took a simple, subtle step backwards. You want to be in a place that's designed. And so whatever you're going through, step over it, step around it, get under it, go through it. However you need to keep moving forward in the face of adversity. That's the one mantra that I have no matter what.
Keep moving forward. I love it. I often share with people that you win the next opportunity by succeeding in the one that you're in today. And success is never backwards. It's never around. It is through the obstacle. And then once you overcome that, you get the next opportunity to succeed in it. So you can't make a habit of quitting, and you have to keep moving forward. So I appreciate that sentiment very much. We all need it. We all get desperate, and we all fall into despair, and we all get overwhelmed at some point in time. But the less time you spend in that state, and the quicker that you rebound and you just start moving again, it is a life-changing habit, because there's no time for that. You've got to move forward. Devin, how can people reach you that would like to connect with you to learn more about you or Burn Bootcamp?
Instagram is the best place right now for both of those, Burn Bootcamp Instagram, or anywhere on the internet really, and Devin.Kline on Instagram. And if depending on when this comes out, JD, I've been spending the last like 10 years of my career building health and fitness content for people. And now in the position that myself and the company are in, I'm really excited to be launching a new YouTube channel here shortly. And so I'll put out a couple videos a week that'll just share a story from Burn Bootcamp, kind of through the lens of a real-time operator and how it's going currently in the moment. I've got a whole batch series of like catch-up stories to get us to this point. And then it's kind of this new take. I haven't seen anybody do this yet of actually like, here's what happened this week, and here's the lessons that I learned from it, and here's what you can literally go, like, you can take this framework and go use it for yourself. So interesting to see how that goes. But I know I was hungry for mentorship when I was a young man and couldn't really find it in abundance. And so I think out of wanting to teach and help and give back to those who found themselves in a position I was once in, the prospect of teaching entrepreneurs things like you are is it's pretty exciting. I think we need a lot more of it. So I'll be happy to contribute there.
We will look for that YouTube channel. What's going to be the name of it? How can we find it? Burn
Devin Kline
Bootcamp?
on YouTube. Devin Kline, just
Just
self-brand.
Devin Kline on YouTube. It will be brilliant, I'm sure. Devin, thanks for being on.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you, man. You're awesome. And I love what you're doing on the Homefront podcast. Keep it up. And I want to come back, and I want to bring Morgan back at some point too, because she's a rock star. And I think all your CEOs out there in the world can really learn something from her.
100%. We'll schedule it. I am Jeff Duden, and we have been on the Homefront, currently number 42 on Apple in entrepreneurship. Thank you much for listening. And as always, this podcast has been brought to you by Homefront Brands, delivering enterprise level solutions to local business owners out there on the Homefront where it counts. So if this sounds like you, check us out at homefrontbrands.com today and start your next chapter of greatness, building your dynasty on the Homefront. I will be right here looking for you. Thanks for listening.